affecting the brain? There is a before 60 and after 60.
Well, the age is a risk factor, so the older you are, the more likely you are to develop a disease like Alzheimer's disease. However, there are cases of people in their 40s, their 50s, and even in their 30s developing Alzheimer's. So,
and why would they develop Alzheimer's in their 30s?
Difficult to know, again, and not enough research to know why that happens. What we know is when it happens at a younger age, it tends to develop much quicker, which is very sad. You see very young people.
This is a disease that is caused by the dying of brain cells.
That's right. You've got platelets that basically surround the brain cells.
So platelets that only affects the memory and not the motor.
What happens is that, yes, memory would be one of the most common symptoms of a disease like Alzheimer's. And in terms of motor, it can happen at a later stage. Usually we say that dementia develops in 3 different stages. We've got an early, a middle, and an end stage, which is basically the level of progression of each of the symptoms. When you are at sort of a later stage, you can lose your mobility, your ability to speak, even your ability to swallow. So it's really the kind of end stage of life, really, where you need full care.
And that stage would happen like about at what age? Is there like a...
It depends. Usually some people, we say that the average life expectancy after you being diagnosed is around 8 years. Some people will be able to go for 20 years. Some people will go for 5 years. It varies. The average is 8, but it really depends on how much support you have, how physically healthy you are. So quite a few factors there.
And how much treatment you get.
How much treatment?
Just early treatment, early therapy, early medication. Like you said, there are times when medication is basically prescribed.
Yes.
Explain that to us.
Yeah, the early diagnosis is very important because then you will be able to identify what is going wrong. And also,
how does one diagnose Alzheimer's?
A series of, you do need to do a series of very simple memory tests, and you need to have blood investigations, and there's a sort of a series of medical investigations that you do.
So the medical investigations will prove that you have...
Yes, that you will have...
Okay, let's take a break, and after this break we have more to talk about Alzheimer's, and how does one define Alzheimer's, and how does one know if you've got Alzheimer's. As before the break we promised you, we're going to talk about the definition extensively about the definition of Alzheimer's, and how does one basically do tests to find out whether you have Alzheimer's. Yes, Joe, you were continuing when I stopped you and interrupted and went for a break.
No problem. So I'll try to bring that to the Sri Lankan reality, because usually, the kind of steps that I was describing to you would be what would happen in the UK, for example. You would go to see your GP, your general practitioner. He would do a series of different tests, including blood tests, brain scans, and then probably you would get a diagnosis.
So is a brain scan a must?
It's not a must. It's not a must. But in some cases where it isn't very clear, you may be asked to have a brain scan. It's helpful. Technology has changed and is very much more advanced nowadays, so you can see much more.
So is there any particular part of the brain that gets affected when it's Alzheimer's?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think there are specific parts of the brain that are affected depending on what type of dementia you have. But I don't think that is that selective in the process of which cells I'm going to attack and kill.
Let's talk about the caregiver's role, and once we identify, or once we come to the center, is it just the center that could identify, or does one need to go to any GP to get a definition of what you have, in case you have like memory loss? We all have memory loss for, as we grow older. That's part of, I suppose, growing old. But that does not necessarily mean that it's AD or dementia or any other disease that we're talking about.
My impression, Lorraine, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there are lots of groups of good doctors and people working around this topic. So there's a lot of individual work happening in the country. So yes, there will be some doctors that probably will be aware of this problem and will be able to...
Do you need to go to a specific specialist or any GP?
In Sri Lanka, usually you go to a neurologist or psychiatrist rather than your general doctor here in Sri Lanka. But what is important as well to say is that in a way this is a new problem to Sri Lanka because up until recently, Sri Lanka was quite a young country, but at the moment it is one of the fastest aging countries in the world. So, in a sense, the medical community hasn't had to face this problem that often, but that is changing. So I think that more
and even if the problem is there, I don't think they identified the problem to AD or Alzheimer's or whatever. You didn't know that, until you found the foundation that that's what your father had. So none of us would know that's what our grandparents or fathers.
Yes. So that exposure is quite important. So I think that this, the diagnosing steps that you need to follow will be more and more adopted by neurologists and psychiatrists across the country as they become more exposed to patients coming in through the clinics and asking for this test, because inevitably statistics show that is very likely to happen as you have a country which is aging. I think that...
Okay, so talking about the caregiver, and what kind of therapy and what do you have to do if you have somebody in the family with Alzheimer's?
We have a guidebook that we send out to all caregivers on how, a health guide. And we invite them to attend the caregiver support group meetings to share their experiences and to learn from other caregivers, meet other carers, to know that they're not in this alone. They sometimes bond and they provide emotional support to each other. And
they continue to build up a relationship where they learn from each other.
Of course, because some people have been caregivers for 8 years and some have just started caring. So in fact we have a carer who looked after his wife for about 10 years and she passed away a year and a half ago, but he still comes to our support group meetings and we encourage that because he has a wealth of experience to share with other carers.
But no research has been done to why and how it transpires, so we wouldn't know exactly how to stay safe. But once you know that you have Alzheimer's or dementia, let's talk about, you talked about medication, you talked about, is there any kind of rehabilitation that has to be done, or therapy, what kind of therapy? And
we can talk about the therapies that we do at the centre, which is they're very simple, really. But it's all about promoting independence, so making sure that people that come to the centre keep their brains as active as possible, and that they are busy and able to retain the faculties that they still have. So 3 therapies, 2 of which we haven't started, include, we have a creative art therapy group where basically people will do painting, will play music, will do drawing, will do drama, storytelling. So it's very much helping people to have fun,
stay active,
and stay active. We're going to have a reminiscence group, which is a group which helps people to remember their past lives, and it is done in a group where you discuss who you are. So it's about the individual, talking about him or herself, and helping the person to retain an identity which can be lost.
So that's better than being isolated in a room somewhere.
Exactly.
So this is the kind of caregiving that we're talking about. Okay.
Because it's not all about just giving the medication and keeping them at home
and keeping them
coming
quiet.
out once a week to a different environment, and our environment is a very positive environment. There's a lot of love and laughter. Like one of the people who has dementia said to us, "Love is life," and So when someone came to interview me, I said, no, it would be nice for you to interview the patients and the volunteers for a change. And that's what she said, love is life, and that's what we get here. So that was very positive.
And that's the key to, that's the main component of life. What's your final word to our people in Sri Lanka from the foundation?
To accept, not to be in denial, and to contact the Lanka Alzheimer's Foundation, because we are there to be of service, to support and help carers, and we want to see the person who has dementia have a better quality of life.
Joe, do you have a final, statement to make to the people of Sri Lanka?
Well, very much what Lorraine said. People not to be scared. It's a normal process. We can all get unwell, and help is there. That's what we're here for, and we want to help people to live as healthy as possible, and that Sri Lanka is a healthy nation with a long future.
Absolutely. We have a very good primary healthcare system in this country, and we are a healthy nation, and we want to stay healthy. Look for support when you need support. Alzheimer's and dementia. The foundation is set up by Lorraine and her husband, and today we had Lorraine Kamitigama, co-founder of the Alzheimer's Foundation. And also we had this wonderful volunteer who's visiting Sri Lanka from Britain, from the association called the Volunteer Service Overseas. He's a community nurse. I find it very difficult to pronounce his name, Jao Marshall Grillo. Did I do justice to your name?
You did justice.
Okay, Jao, thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you for having us, Rosie.
It was a world of wealth as far as information goes when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.